Hare Krishna. Welcome to today's sample lesson of the seminar Srila Prabhupada, our founder, Acharya. It's a little tricky doing selected lessons because I can't fix the mic. Okay. Because I made the seminar sequentially, so each lesson builds on the last. So we have to depend on question and answers. Hopefully I'll leave more time for question and answers today to fill in the gaps. Because the lesson I'm presenting today, for example, it presumes that you've had the lessons before it, but you haven't. So I'll try to be conscious of that when I speak, and also please just ask the questions that you need to ask because you didn't have the other lessons. Okay. Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya. This is lesson 7 in the 10-lesson seminar. It's the last lesson of the Abhideya phase. The first phase of the seminar is Sambandha, and yesterday I gave the third lesson in Sambandha, the last lesson in that phase. Who remembers the title of the lesson I gave yesterday? Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya. It's the signature lesson of the whole seminar. And who remembers a definition, or let's see, according to the Shastra we gave, who was qualified, or who was identified as being of the caliber of a founder Acharya? Anybody remember anything? Yeah, one could say a characteristic. Can you give one? Sir, I don't remember that, but that's certainly true. Udarika. Yeah, he's the savior of everyone. That's what savior. There we go. And those who follow him are called, what's the Sanskrit term? Did you write that? Upakarika. And they are assistants of their founder Acharya. Okay, let's see. Who remembers one prediction of Prabhupada's coming from Shastra? Any ladies? Remember a prophecy from Shastra? Prediction? Prabhu? Who said? Krishna. Krishna said. To whom? Ganga. Don't worry. All these people, you're so worried that they're going to use your sacred waters as a toxic waste dump. Don't worry. This my mantra, Upasaka, he's going to preach so powerfully. He'll make many pure devotees, and they'll come to your holy waters, and they'll purify you. They're going to purify you. Okay, and who remembers one way that Lord Chaitanya set the stage for Prabhupada to come? Any ladies? Yes, who remembers one way that Lord Chaitanya set the stage, the world stage, for Prabhupada to come? Historically, how did he do that? We listed several ways he did that. Okay, Prabhuji. '61 to '65, Vatican II, the Second Vatican Council, and what came out of that council, which helped prepare the field for Prabhupada to preach. Yeah, God can manifest His mercy, His grace, through many paths. That was huge for the Roman Catholic Church to say that. Okay, and what was the other? Okay, and then for the final review, how did Srila Prabhupada manifest to an unprecedented degree? Just name one thing he did as a founder Acharya. Ben. He circumambulated, I like that. He circumambulated the world. Pradakshina pade pade. Yeah, he circled the globe 14 times, and all you have to do to get just a hint of Prabhupada's extraordinary strength is just read his itinerary. That's the open challenge I have for anybody. Just read his itinerary from 66 basically, or 65 in Jaladuta, till 77, and you will get exhausted just reading the itinerary. What to speak of living it, No such thing as jet lag for His Divine Grace. Okay, so after that culminating lesson in Sambandha, then the way Abhideya works in the seminar is we go to the mission. We want to, now that we've deepened our awareness of Prabhupada's position and his relationship with all generations of ISKCON devotees as our founder Acharya, then we go into acting on this deepened awareness to improve, deepen our contribution to his mission. So the next two lessons, what they are, they're sort of mini Lilamritas. Lesson 4 and lesson 5. It goes from seed to first buds. I use these garden metaphors. Not just because we're in England, but because they work. As Lord Chaitanya said, I am the tree of love of God, and I am also the distributor of the fruits. He himself used these garden metaphors. So we go from the first time Srila Prabhupada meets Saraswati Thakur to his leaving for America. That's the first part of the mission. And you really get a sense of what the mission is from that. And then you get the whole flowering of the mission with the ISKCON branch, another horticultural metaphor. You get a branch. And Prabhupada called ISKCON a branch of the Chaitanya tree in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And we start right away with the 7 purposes of ISKCON, and then we go into the 4 phases that Prabhupada manifested his mission. And then the final phase of the manifestation of Prabhupada's mission was an unfulfilled phase. Any hints on that? What's that? Yeah. That's his one stated lamentation. I haven't shown you how to live. I haven't shown you how to do Daiva Varnashram Dharma, which you very much need. And the lesson just before this is called Varnashram, Clearing the Confusion. And the reason there's so much confusion about Varnashram is because Prabhupada used the phrase in 4 different ways. Over 3 phases of time, he applied it differently to ISKCON. So unless you know le grand tableau, the big picture, then you get stuck on just one piece of the picture. According to our karmas, we tend to focus on something we like. So, Jai, Sisi Radha Gokulananda Sitaram, Hanuman, Lakshman, Hanuman. How do you say? Lakshman, Hanuman, yeah? Lakshman, right, first? Then Hanuman? Okay. When I was here in 78, there was no Sitaram, huh? Now it has pride of place right here. Okay, so, so because it was a work in progress, ISKCON, we're going to have questions at the end. Yeah. Four ways Prabhupada used the term. I'm not going to go into it because there isn't time. And then he still used the phrase 4 different ways, but he applied the term over 3 phases of time differently in ISKCON. Basically, it was you don't need it. You need it to set an example for them. You need it to make it. It's in a nutshell. And I hope I can come back to England and present the whole thing to unpack all that. Anyway, so this is all a lead up to today's lesson. It's called Finding Our Mission in the Mission. And here's the transition. And look, once again, I used these beautiful manner shots. I mean, those pictures that Bhargava Prabhu took on, I guess it's the south side of the lawn. And there's a whole different mood. Prabhupada's deep humility, deep meditation on Sri Sri Radha Gokulananda. Beautiful, beautiful shot. So here's the transition to today's lesson. At the end of the last lesson, that's the Varnashram lesson, we took a look at the last unfulfilled phase of our founder Acharya's movement, the demonstration of a spiritually classless society through the development of Daiva Varnashram communities. The only equality exists on the spiritual platform. To try to make us all the same materially is absurd. And that's one reason why the modern world is going mad, because they're trying to have equality materially, which is ridiculous. We're all very different materially, but we're very much the same or equal in the eyes of God spiritually. Okay, so, and the only way we can really demonstrate this is through the development of Daiva Varnashram communities. Living the way Krishna lives in a pastoral village setting, such communities would offer us and the world a complete and practical vision of how Krishna culture works on earth, the Lord's positive alternative to the suffering and impersonalism imposed by so-called modern civilization. Now, that said, then I say this. But since many of us first followers of our founder Acharya were born and raised in Kali's cities and suburbs, now I say first followers, I include all of us in this, because it's historically, in terms of time, we're still very close to when Prabhupada appeared. And we're all still coming from the same urban-suburban bag, most of us. Like America, for example. America started 97% agrarian. When the colonies actually left England, declared independence. It was 97% agrarian, and now it's about 1%. At least 1% of the population produces the food. And even that food is highly compromised by, genetically modified seeds and all the agribusiness nonsense. So we're all still coming from this modern artificial society. So I say again, but since many of us first followers of our founder Acharya were born and raised in Kali's cities and suburbs, we may find ourselves neither ready, willing, nor able to follow Srila Prabhupada into the Varnashram frontier. And we may wonder what our place is in our founder Acharya's greater mission, to re-spiritualize humanity. So in this lesson, we'll take a look at how to find our natural place in our founder Acharya's worldwide movement, and also how to see the Lord through service, to his confidential servant, Srila Prabhupada. Okay. So that's the intro. Oop. Better leave that there, the water's underneath. Okay, Prabhu? Oh, I can do it. Oop. Okay. So, finding our mission in the mission. Is this the right height? Yeah? Okay. So, it starts with knowing who we are and what to do. And that's no small thing in Kali Yuga. And there's a whole industry out there. It's called, occupational therapy, I think. I mean, people, we have a hard time understanding what our duty is in Kali Yuga. We're going to explore this a little bit now. Let me first ask you a question. Only twice in the Gita are there pairs of verses where the first line is the same. And since that's true, and since there's literally billions of verses in the Vedas, and since the Gita, even by Shankaracharya's reckoning, Shankara called the Gita the quintessential of essentials, since each Gita verse sums up literally tens of millions of Vedic verses. It's Veda concentrate. If Krishna only repeated a line in two different occasions, in two sets, that means it's pretty darn important. So who knows the two places in the Gita where Krishna repeats a first line, a first Sanskrit line? Anybody know? Yes, Manmana is one. It comes in 934. Think of me, become my devotee. And again, where does that appear, Manmana? Yes, 1865. Very good. So that's very important. thinking of Krishna. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. That's the most important. Now there's one other place in the Gita where Krishna does that. He repeats the first Sanskrit line. Does anybody know? Yes, very good. Shreyan svadharma vigunak paradharmat svanushtitahat. Now it ends differently, but the first line is the same. And it's all about, it's better to engage in your own duty than someone else's duty. So, Sutapa, how do you say, Sutapa or Sutapa? Sutapa. Prabhu, you win the prize. You read the first. So that's how Krishna ended it. It's dangerous to try to imitate somebody else's duties. Now, Sutta Prabhu, read the second, that's Gita 335, Karma Yoga, all about action in there. And then again in the 18th chapter, Krishna says, go ahead.
It's better to engage in one's occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions.
So here, Krishna gives a positive end. It's if you do that, Arjun, then no sinful reactions. And that was Arjun's main argument. He was preaching in the first chapter of the Gita. He was saying, the Gita is such a scripture that the person in illusion is telling God, God, thou shalt not kill. It's that elevated. But he was arguing on the level of dharma, not on bhakti. So Krishna's telling Arjuna, just do your duty, and either materially or spiritually. If we're doing our duty according to higher authority, there's never any sinful reaction. Just like we have this thing in America right now in the news, there was a fellow who was over in Afghanistan, if you've been following the news, and apparently, allegedly, he murdered 16 Afghan civilians. Not on the line of duty. He just wantonly, allegedly, did this. And so now he's in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and he's awaiting trial because, and he had previously been decorated, for being a great soldier, a great guy, and heroic and this and that. But allegedly he lost it, and he just killed all these civilians. So that wasn't authorized, so now he's really in for it. Okay, so that's underscoring the importance of knowing what our duty is. Now, but we have to back up, don't we? Because before we can know what our duty is, what do we have to know? Raise your hand if you guess where I'm going with this. We have to know who we are. Who am I? Kayami, And that's not easy in Kali Yuga because we're so mixed. Look at this. Okay, so on the left we have a little, it's Socrates with his finger raised, and there's this disciple Crito. And let me see if I can find okay. I got to bring a sponge to these sessions because my finger doesn't let me turn the pages without skipping. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so there's the famous scene. Socrates has been convicted of heresy. He was preaching against the going Hellenistic theology, and he's been cursed to drink hemlock and die. So there's his disciple Crito. He's turning away. He's got his head in his hands. He's giving his master the hemlock, and Socrates says to Crito, "Know thyself, Crito. After you're dead, what shall we do with you?" Socrates, "You can do what you like, but first you'll have to catch me." Prabhupada liked that. Prabhupada said, here is a Brahman realized person. He knows he's not the body. First you'll have to catch me. So, unfortunately, now on the right panel, we have your bard. He was recently named Millennium Man, Mr. Shakespeare. And famously in, in Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 3, Shakespeare has Polonius moralized to his son Laertes, "This above all, to thine own self be true." Famous line from Hamlet. So, but by Shakespeare's time, that was like, centuries, millennia, even later. The concept of the self had degraded. It was no longer simply Atma, but when most people talk about self these days, in fact, in America, there's even a magazine called Self. Have you seen this on the racks? Self? But what do they mean by self? Can you take a guess? The body, or at best, the subtle mind, and just pamper that to the max, polish the cage and polish the inside of the cage. So, what do I write here? Further into Kali Yuga than Socrates, Shakespeare's line is more often quoted for dramatic effect than for enlightenment. Owing to the ascendance of passion and ignorance, self-realization has too often degraded into absorption in the external self. So, what do I have for the quote here? Oh yeah, in Kali Yuga, why is it so difficult to know who we are and what our duty is? Prabhu, you get to read the quote from Prabhupada now. We are literally all mixed up in Kali Yuga. Or let's see if I can do this voice. I did George yesterday. We'll see if I can do John. John Lennon once said to the press, because he fancied himself a social commentator, most people are born out of a bottle of beer on Saturday night, Yeah. That's why Lord Chaitanya said, Kalo Shudra Sambhavaha. Samskars are out the window in Kali Yuga. So we're not born generally of, with proper samskar and proper matching in the Vedic way of the man and the woman. So we're born with these conflicted tendencies. Have you noticed? In yourself? In your own mind? In your own body? We're born with all these, there's no more pure, thoroughbred Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. We're all born a mixed bag, and so we have a hard time understanding who we are and what to do because of these mixed up tendencies. So, and there's Varna Sankar literally means mixed caste. It means we're all mixed up. So what to do? Helpers. Maybe we can raise that. Is that possible? Or lower the screen? We need help. Help. We need help for determining our prescribed duty, even for understanding ourselves. Okay, that's great. So what kind of help are we talking about? Well, let's see. First of all, there's a saying in English, it probably started in England. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. So who's the first guru? Ladies, raise your hand if you know what I'm getting at. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. The mother. She's the first guru. She's what the baby's hearing. The mother tongue. She's hearing the language. She's the first example and shelter for the child. So, let's see here. And then the mother and the father in Kali Yuga, if there is one, you're lucky, You're lucky to make it out of the womb in Kali Yuga. Prabhupada, right? Prabhupada sometimes he would say, the closest thing to real love, true love in the material world, is the mother of the love of the mother for the child. Counterpoint to that is, I saw Prabhupada in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was sitting on the Vyasasana. I was sitting right there, and Prabhupada's facing there, so it was a profile. So Prabhupada is leaning out from the Vyasasana, and he's twisting his hand like a knife. And he was telling us how bad Kali Yuga is. And he said, Kali Yuga is so bad. Even in the womb, they are coming after you with knife. And Prabhupada twisted his hand like a knife, even in the womb. And his eyes were bugging out of his head because I was sitting, I could see his eyes. And he said, this is Kali Yuga, even in the womb, coming after you with knife. Yes. Woo, heavy. So if we're lucky, we have a mother and a father that, and that's not so common. these days. And then, who might you think would be another helper in a sane society after the parents, determining who we are? And yeah, the teachers. You go to school, and we're talking in a sane society. So, so let's go to when Prabhupada started to talk about Varnashram Dharma in Mayapur and Vrindavan, 1974. Famous walks and talks. Let's see what's on the next. Okay, that's Dhruva. So here's Prabhupada talking, and a disciple says, so in our movement, the leaders must decide how every devotee and every resource is engaged properly. Prabhupada, that is leadership. That is leadership. Which person is fitted for which work? Disciple, yes, utilization of all resources. Prabhupada, yes. Atreya, this is the disciple, Atreya Rishi, including devotees and funds and everything. Prabhupada, then the first thing is that we should see that everyone is engaged. How the person should be engaged, that requires leadership. Okay. And then another disciple, Panchadravida Swami, at the time, he said, or still actually, Panchadravida talks, he's asking how do people know how do you know how to train people in a Varnashram college? Panchadravida, how do you teach in a Varnashram college? In a Varnashram college, if somebody comes in, they say, I want to be Kshatriya, or I want to be a Vaishya. Is it like that? Prabhupada, no, that will be tested by the teachers. What for he is fit? He will be tested by the Guru. And then Prabhupada introduces another helper, the Guru, or Gurus, Vande Guru Nisha Bhaktan, Shiksha, Diksha, Varnapradarshika, the whole Guru community. So, now we're getting into the next. Now what's going to appear on the screen now, well, let's see if I should read this first. Yeah, I'll read this. This is from CC. Adi Lila purport. Prabhupada writes, the expert spiritual master knows well how to engage his disciples' energy in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. And thus he becomes a devotee in a specific devotional service according to his special tendency. Excuse me. According to a special tendency, a devotee must have only one initiating spiritual master, because in the scriptures, acceptance of more than one is always forbidden. There is no limit, however, to the number of instructing spiritual masters one may accept. Generally, a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on. Generally, traditionally, not the way we've done it in ISKCON most of the time, but that's part of the message of the seminar about getting back to Guru Sadhu Shastra, back to tradition. Now, what's going to appear on the screen now is, you remember Dhruva Leela. Dhruva, he's been insulted by Saruchi, his stepmother. His real mother, Suniti, has told him to go to the forest. She can't help him, but she knows who can. She's his Vartma Pradarshika Guru. She says, go to the forest where the rishis go to find God. And God can help you. So Dhruva goes to the forest, and and then he meets Narada Muni. Narada Muni, of course, always on the scene, just at the right time. And Narada Muni says, what do you want? And Dhruva tells him, and Narada says, well, come on, you're a 5-year-old boy, and just, grow up, come back later. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the idea, that's the mood. So Dhruva isn't going to buy it. Is this? Yes. So he says, your instructions do not stand in my heart, Narada Muni, because I'm a Kshatriya, 5-year-old boy, and I've been insulted, and I'm determined. That's Dhruva means that. So you please, help me. So here's what Prabhupada writes in the purport about that exchange. Mataji, want to read? important. Okay, keep reading.
Unless a child is trained according to his tendency, there is no possibility of his developing his particular skill. It is the duty of a spiritual master or teacher to observe the psychological movement of a particular man and thus train him in a particular professional duty.
Very good, thank you. So we need help, and especially when the person grows up, we especially need really thick relationships with our mentors, and especially the people we take shiksha and diksha from. Okay, so now we go into how to select those core key helpers. On selecting our spiritual masters. Okay. Let me see what I wrote. Okay. So this is me, I'm saying. First of all, as followers of our founder Acharya, we should select gurus whose mood and vision are compatible with Srila Prabhupada's. Now here is wise advice from the GBC's Shastric Advisory Committee. They once wrote a paper, the Shastric Advisory Committee for the GBC back in 2005, about balancing the responsibility of prospective gurus and prospective disciples in the initiation process. And here's what I mean by that. Well, first of all, I'll just read this. This is the advice on just basic guidelines of choosing masters within the ISKCON Sangha. Okay, again, this is the Shastric Advisory Committee saying, quote, "The eternal leader of our Sangha, ISKCON, is Srila Prabhupada. And he had his own special vision about how to practice and spread Krishna consciousness. Devotees in ISKCON have decided to follow Srila Prabhupada because he is the one who saved them and is bringing them to Sri Krishna. They understand Prabhupada as the most empowered Vaishnavacharya of modern times, mainly because his vision and method of worldwide preaching is most effective for people in general." We talked about that in Sambandha, right? How what Prabhupada was able to do was uncanny. It was transcendental, how he was able to connect with people spiritually. So he was uniquely empowered to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Not every Vaishnav guru in the world has this same personal vision and mood. Accepting a guru who does not have the same vision and mood as Srila Prabhupada would create disharmony in the society he created. Therefore, if someone is attracted to a guru who is functioning outside of ISKCON, the best arrangement is that he or she goes outside ISKCON to associate with that guru in the kind of environment the guru has created. So, kind of like common sense, but common sense is not so common in Kali Yuga, right? We have to be reminded. So what's the process on selecting our spiritual masters? Well, we've been through a lot in ISKCON's history with this, but I'm going to put one quote on the board that I actually was present for, but I don't remember Prabhupada saying it, so thank God we have retrieval systems to keep his words, his spoken word and his written word. This is Miami, Florida, 1975, February, and Prabhupada at one point in his talk, he was lecturing on Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, texts 1, 2, and 3 over 2 nights, under a spotlight, under a tree in New Naimisharanya forest. It was beautiful times. But Prabhupada at one point said this. Tattvavit Prabhu, you want to read that? Yes, Prabhupada is making a reference to this. If you look in Chaitanya Chaitamrita Madhya-lila 24:330, Lord Chaitanya is describing to Sanatana Goswami, he's telling him, you have to write a book, a Vaishnav guide, and we know it now as the Hari Bhakti Vilas. And in this text, Mahaprabhu is saying to Sanatana, your book should describe the characteristics of the bona fide guru and the bona fide disciple. Then, before accepting a spiritual master, one can be assured of the spiritual master's position. Similarly, the spiritual master can also be assured of the disciple's position. This is called mutual examination. And when Prabhupada says here, they must behave one another, that's Prabhupada's Indian English. What does he mean by behave there? Examine, right? It's not grammatical English, but that's what Prabhupada is saying. Okay, so in his purport to this verse I just read about mutual examination, Prabhupada writes, a serious disciple must be alert when selecting a bona fide spiritual master. He must be sure that the spiritual master can deliver all the transcendental necessities. The spiritual master must observe how inquisitive the disciple is and how eager he is to understand the transcendental subject matter. The spiritual master should study the disciple's inquisitiveness for no less than 6 months or a year. So why am I bringing all this up? It's because it's all about finding our mission in the mission, and we have to know who we are. We have to know, with the help of our mentors and being introspective. I love that word because in one purport, Prabhupada says, a devotee is as thoughtful as a non-devotee is speculative. In other words, the mind's always going. You lie down to try to go to sleep sometimes, and the mind is just, still going. So we need help in Kali Yuga to know who we are, what to do, and especially, it's really all about our mentors, the Shiksha and the Diksha Gurus. So how does that work? Here's the next quote. Let's see. Prabhuji, want to read that? Yeah. As Srila Prabhupada say, if you want gold, but you don't know what gold is, you can easily be cheated. So to know how to enhance our foundational relationship, as the GBC puts it in a resolution, with our founder Acharya, we have to first know our founder Acharya, his life, his teachings, his mood, his mission. And in that informed, educated consciousness, then we can make intelligent choices about who to select as Shiksha, Diksha Gurus. And even if we're sincere and serious and authentic candidates for initiation, and even if, some person who's initiating is sincere, serious, and authentic, still there has to be that examination period because it may not be a match. Just like in marriage, right? Or as Prabhupada in his disgust with our generation, the way the marriages were going, he once said this, maybe you know this quote. Someone had just read a letter to Prabhupada while he was being massaged about another breakup, of a marriage. And they were good devotees. Good, the girl was good, the boy was good, but then they just couldn't, make it together. So Prabhupada shook his head and said, very nice boy, very nice boy, very nice girl, very nice girl. Together, bad. Simply bad. So in our generation, Prabhupada, he was so disgusted with the way, anyway, okay, I'm digressing now. So what's the point? The point is, the relationship still has to work. So there's no rush to judgment on initiation. And Prabhupada himself, because of the circumstances of his life, how many years did he wait between first meeting and Diksha? You know? 11 years. He met Saraswati Thakur in 22, took Diksha in Allahabad in 33. So, okay. So it's very important that we are very educated. That's not how it's been in ISKCON. It's very often been sentimental. It's been a star system. People are starstruck, and then they just, and then it becomes my guru is better than your guru. It's silly. It's childish, and it's sectarian, and it's divisive, and we need to move on from this. Okay, so let's see what the next slide's all about. What do I have here? Okay, so how do we connect? Now we go into the heart of the piece. Now that we've talked about, who we are, what our duty is, how to find that out. Now we go into Jai. Now we go into surrendering. Jai. Sri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda. Now we go into finding our mission and our founder Acharya's mission. So, let's find, connecting with authentic and appropriate spiritual masters. Since our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada's mission is nothing less than a spiritual revolution for all humanity. Where does he say that? That this is supposed to be, this has the potential, the capacity to revolutionize the world. Where is that? Yeah, and what's he quoting? Yes, it's a verse. Okay. We must connect with masters who know our founder Acharya's life and teachings, his mood, his mission, and who know us well enough to engage us in that aspect of Prabhupada's mission in which we can make our best contribution, to bring us closer to Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. Then, with the help of our guides, we understand ourselves and our prescribed duties, our own mission for our founder Acharya's greater mission, and how all aspects of his mission serve the supreme mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in which Lord Chaitanya's mission, Prithivityacha Yatanagaradi Gram, he says, every town and village, my holy name will be sung. Then daily, when we know all these things, and when we're what's called rightly situated, Prabhupada uses that phrase, daily we can become enthused and empowered in dynamic spiritual life. So Indriyesh made a heavy comment. I said, why do we need this seminar? And what did you remember what your first words were? Well, I think we did. I think we practically did. Now, Indriyesh Prabhu, we have to beware of comments like that, because if I say we're practically dead, what am I suggesting? That maybe I'm practically dead. So I'm imputing, my own feelings on the wider Sangha, perhaps. We have to be aware of we. Maybe objectively, there's truth. I'm not from this yatra. I don't see that you're dead. I see good people here. You don't look dead to me. So, but what I'm suggesting is, you want to, now he's going to qualify it. Okay, qualify it. Yeah, we're still working it out. We need to know each other better. Yes, for sure. Okay. So, but when it's done right, I'm sure there are people in this Sangha right here who know what their mission is in Prabhupada's mission, who've been doing it. I can think, I forgot the lady's name, the sweet lady. Kalangana. That's her mission, to make the whole world sweet. Make the whole world happy and sweet. She certainly made my day sweet yesterday with that saffron sandesh. Okay. So finding our mission within ISKCON. If, for example, we decide we would like to participate inside Srila Prabhupada's institution, ISKCON, whose mission will find fulfillment in the global establishment of Daiva Varnashram spiritual communities, we can examine the society's different features and consult with our mentors about where we can make our best contribution. So when you hear people talking about Daiva Varnashram, unfortunately, if they're very fired up, but they don't have a well-rounded view of it, they end up discouraging people, because it comes off like we have to run away from the cities and just live in caves, or we're all going to just dig in the dirt. Now, Krishna culture is agrarian, and it's best practiced in the country. But even in that Daiva Varnashram mission, everybody has a place. So, and one of the places is right here. Urban, suburban temples. Well, this is more like a country temple. What goes on here? Deity worship, book prasad distribution, sadhaka training, preacher training. Ideally, that's what's going on in the temples. We're worshiping the deities, we're distributing knowledge, and we're engaging in education and training. And education and training is now at least popular in ISKCON, but we really suffered after Prabhupada left. It became, we used to have this word, do you still use this? Bloop? People still use that word? Well, after Prabhupada left our vision, and we went through so many somersaults as regards, guru, disciple, and all this stuff, and we're still getting it right. You're right. It's at least in America, where I'm from, it's not so much that people blooped, but they blipped. They just sort of got bored because they outgrew what we had to offer, because we ceased to train and educate people. And Prabhupada wanted us to continue the training in Varnashram colleges. Okay, that's another seminar. Urban suburban temples, so we can participate in this Daiva Varnashram revolution right here. This is good. This is authentic. You don't have to leave the manor to go someplace more remote. You got the cow palace here. I went over there yesterday. It's quite a place. I've never seen such a nice place for cows. Congregational development, Nam Hut, Bhakti Briksha, Internet Sangha, Krishna Conscious Service Organization Development. You've got all that going on here in the UK. I see Food for All, and there's a Hingsa milk, and it's good. That's great. It's just very pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. Varnashram College. We haven't done that yet. We need to do that to understand who we are better and how we all need each other and how we're interdependent. And that's still only theoretical. We're still kind of like modern people. We don't want to be dependent on anybody because, we're just like that. We believe, at least in America, it's the family. Well, now there's hardly any family left. It used to be the nuclear family. Nuclear family means nuclear war. There's no support group. There's no extended family. It's not just about the parents, right? You need a lot of help. But now there's hardly any family because marriage is becoming obsolete, forgetting the purpose of life. Okay, we need Varnashram colleges. So this is starting a little bit, that people are talking about it and they want to get it together. So we have the first glimmers of it, like in Radhadesh. They're doing something there, and other places like in Mayapur. You see the beginnings in Mayapur of what Prabhupada called Mayapur University. So organically, naturally, there's different schools springing up in Mayapur, and eventually they'll all be part of an organized, unified effort under one university. It's very inspiring. Okay, so the Varnashram College to train people in the duties of the Varnas and Ashrams and how they connect. And here's one that says, and what's the advantage of pursuing a Varnashram culture? Here's one advantage. Prabhupada, and this is February 14th, 1977. Prabhupada's in his quarters in Mayapur. February 14th is what on our calendar? Valentine's Day. So we in the Varnashram research call this Prabhupada's Varnashram Valentine to ISKCON. And here's the Valentine, folks. Prabhupada, therefore, why a Shudra artificially should be a Brahmin? Most of the time in ISKCON, it was a Brahmins, in Prabhupada's time, it was a Brahmins-only enterprise. So Prabhupada saw we have to give facility for all kinds of people, starting with our own people, because people couldn't handle it. People couldn't take it. Let him remain a Shudra, and if he follows strictly the rules and regulations of Shudra, he'll also be as good as a Brahmin. The same example, just like head is as important as my leg. It is not that because it is leg, it is less important than my head. And if you ask the head, do the work of a leg, it is impossible. And if you ask the leg to work as a brain, that is impossible. Let him remain brain, let him remain leg, and do your duty, and you become perfect. That's Prabhupada's Varnashram Valentine. Be all you can be in Daiva Varnashram Dharma. Okay, so we can participate in Prabhupada's greater mission in restaurants. And Prabhupada really, what Prabhupada liked? He liked restaurants in college towns, especially with reading rooms. You get food, eating food, and then you get food for the mind and the spirit. Farms. Here's a letter. No, you can also, participate in the farms. Although the way it's really going to spread is when we inspire farmers. Not that we have to necessarily be farmers, but if we inspire farmers, they can participate. Quote, "It is very good that the farm will be providing foodstuffs for both the farm and the temple in Paris." Now Prabhupada's talking about New Mayapur, La Nouvelle Mayapur, in Noblesse. "That is wanted. The farm program should be grow your own food, produce your own milk, cloth, and everything, and chant Hare Krishna." Letter to Bhagavan, 14th November 74. Here's another quote. "Grow your own food, build your own homes, make your own cloth, and grow your own medicines." I lived at Gitanagari in southeast Pennsylvania for 13 years, and we once had an herbalist come out to the farm because we didn't know how to make use of all the natural wealth that was on the farm. Her name was Evelyn Snook, a good Pennsylvania Dutch name. And Evelyn came out to the farm because she was an older lady and she had cured herself of cancer in the 1940s. The doctors had sent her home to die, and she determined, no, I'm not going to die. Anyway, somehow her karma was to find out how to cure herself through herbs. So sometimes she would treat the devotees, and then we invited her out finally to Gitanagari to do a tour, an herbal tour. And so as she walked around the farm with us at Gitanagari, she began to say, "You people, you don't know what you have here. You have all your food, you have all your medicine, you even have cosmetics here. You have everything here. This is an amazing display of biodiversity." And so she was trying to educate us, on how to use what we have. So Prabhupada says here, and we are coming to the end for questions. And whatever we do, Prabhupada says, we do as an offering to Lord Krishna. This is natural life, the way human beings were meant to live and become happy. Now Prabhupada wrote that to Harishari Prabhu. And we can participate in these. There's so many affiliates now, like Bhaktivedanta Institute, Food for Life Global, the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies, International Society for Cow Protection. There are so many ways to participate in Prabhupada's revolutionary movement. Or, here's another one. There's Srila Prabhupada, and the caption is, "Be all you can be in our founder Acharya's Daiva Varnashram mission. If we find we would like to participate in our founder Acharya's mission by working in society at large, in the modern society, fine. Then, whatever our God-given talent or profession is, if we decide to dedicate it to the service of the Lord, we will become perfect. We will perfect our lives and become happy." Now, this especially Prabhupada says in a famous purport at the end of that 5th chapter, Tadvag Visargo Janataga Viplavo, 32nd verse, the climactic verse of the chapter. Prabhupada, first the verse is, Narada Muni saying to Vyas, "O Brahman Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead." And in that purport, Prabhupada says, I have it excerpted here, but there's much more in the note, so I'm just going to read the note. Well, I'll show you here's the whole thing. Lord, okay. Ravindra Prabhu, could you read that first line? Okay, stop. And then Prabhupada says, if one is a learned scholar, scientist, philosopher, poet, etc., then he should employ his learning to establish the supremacy of the Lord. Try to study the energy of the Lord in every sphere of life. If one is an administrator, he's hitting on all the varnas here. If one is an administrator, statesman, warrior, politician, and so forth, then one should try to establish the Lord's supremacy in statesmanship. Okay. Fight for the cause of the Lord, as Sri Arjuna did. Similarly, if one is a businessman, an industrialist, an agriculturalist, etc. Then one should spend his hard-earned money for the cause of the Lord. Think always that the money which is accumulated is the wealth of the Lord. And then, Ravinder, keep reading. Yes. So this is Prabhupada. Very inclusive, very encouraging. If we're mature and secure in our mission within the mission, we'll appreciate others' mission too. Just because I'm fired up about farms doesn't mean I can't appreciate book distributors or pujaris. That's kanishta, when we're just in our little groove and we don't appreciate others. Okay, so I'm going to read the review. We looked at the importance of engaging in one's prescribed duty, the difficulty of knowing one's prescribed duty. We looked at who can help us identify our prescribed duty, and we looked at the process of selecting our helpers, our masters, and also finding our mission in Prabhupada's greater mission. And now I'm going to take questions, I think. Yeah. Okay. When we're actually doing the seminar, it's a little more interactive and there's more back and forth. But to get through the material in this box here, this time box, then we're doing it this way. Raise your hand. Tatvavit Prabhu. Okay. That's in lesson 5. The phases. Okay. Well, first of all, the phases. Everybody hear the question? I'll repeat for the listening audience. I mentioned that the Daiva Varnashram is the culminating phase of the movement that we haven't even done yet. So, what are the other 3 phases that Prabhupada introduced the movement? Before I tell you, I'll tell you one fascinating thing, is that Prabhupada had these phases down, at least conceptually, as far back as the late 40s. When we were compiling Prabhupada's life story, the Prabhupada Lilamrita, I was on the team. I was the guy that found a certain essay that Prabhupada wrote after Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. Prabhupada wrote an essay called Interpretations of Bhagavad Gita. And then and he was talking about what Gita was really all about, Gita as it is. And then halfway through the essay, Prabhupada mysteriously starts talking about a community that's based on Bhagavad Gita as it is. And he calls this community the Gita Nagari, the village where the Bhagavad Gita is sung and lived. So there I am reading this essay, living in Gita Nagari, Pennsylvania, and thinking, wow, this is huge. And then I began to see what Prabhupada is talking about. And basically what was going on was, after Gandhi was assassinated, Prabhupada, being the transcendental opportunist that he always was, he began to write to the government. And especially the deputy PM was a guy named Patel. And he said, look, if you want to honor Mahatma Gandhi, don't just make a statue. But Mahatma Gandhi's inspirational book, which gave him the courage and the strength to do what he did, was the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, we know that Prabhupada blasted Gandhi for misunderstanding the Gita. That's another story. But Prabhupada, Prabhupada was capitalizing on Gandhi's popularity, especially now that he was martyred. The whole world is mourning Gandhi. So Prabhupada is telling Dr. Patel that if you allow me, I can make a whole community based on this Bhagavad Gita as it is, Gandhi's book, the inspirational book. And then he went on and on and on. And later on in 56, he did the same thing in his BTG. And basically here it is. And Bhakti Raghava Swami talks about this a lot when he talks about the different movements or waves or phases of the Hare Krishna movement, Varnashram being the final one. The phases are this: holy names and holy books. That's the first phase. And if you think about ISKCON's history, that's what Prabhupada did. He came, he was just chanting Hare Krishna. And he was speaking on Shastra. He was singing, and he was speaking. Okay? That's phase one. And then the phase is temples and deities. Temples and deities. Yes, please do your duty. If you have duties, please do your duty. Temples and deities. And what were the first deities? Like in 26 Second Avenue, what was the first deity in 26? Paintings. Well, even before Panchatattva, before Jadharani painted that, there was a fellow named Harvey Cohen who became the first Haridas, and he painted a circular painting. You ever seen this? You can see it in the movies. Radha Krishna. And it was kind of like the visual behind Swamiji's dais. He was sitting there, and you see this circular picture of Radha and Krishna. But then when it got a little more organized, and Prabhupada actually initiated people, yes, he had Jadharani came in October. She came a little later, 66, and she was an artist. So he had her paint Panchatattva paintings. I've been based in Honolulu, Hawaii for the past 10 years. Prabhupada's, I live in his old dressing room. And the dressing room opens onto Prabhupada's darshan room. So if you go into Prabhupada's darshan room, you see behind the murti is like this. You can either put his bead bag in the murti, or you can put the dictaphone, the same dictaphone that he dictated the books. Prabhupada loved to go to Hawaii. I liked the manner, because it was good for translating. And so in back of Prabhupada, there's a huge painting hanging, done by Govindadasi. And it's a beautiful picture, very rich colors. And that was the first deity in Hawaii. This is a painting of the Panchatattva. So it went from paintings to, I have it all. Let's see. Oh, that's another lesson, yeah. Oh, paintings, and then Prabhupada started importing deities from India. And then devotees started making their own deities, like in New Vrindavan and in Los Angeles, like that. So holy names and holy books, that's phase one. Phase two, more temples and deities. So we started with these storefronts. Why? Because there was no money. The rent was cheap. And then, for example, in LA, they went from a storefront, or in San Francisco, a storefront. And then they started getting their own. They started buying churches, actually, is what happened. Like in New Dwarka, they bought a Methodist church. And then devotees started building their own temples, like that. So, holy names, holy books, phase two, temples and deities. And then, and these don't always go in the same sequence according to where in the world you were. Like, for example, the next phase, Prabhupada talks about congregation, the wider congregation, and initiating the congregation. So in India, life membership congregation started right away. Why? Did anybody know historically why life membership and congregation building started really early on? It wasn't like in America where it was just these insular urban communes and that was the devotees inside the temple. Bas, period. There was no congregation. But why in India did they immediately... Okay, so because when Prabhupada first brought his dancing white elephants to India, as he called, his American disciples, the Indian press did not take it seriously. In fact, they looked at it suspiciously. They said, these are sporadic faddists. Maybe they're coming down off drugs because they're all ex-hippies. Maybe they're CIA, because India then historically was tighter with Russia and the Cold War was on, like that. So Prabhupada said, okay, we're going to do life membership because Krishna culture is just below the surface in India anyway. So he had the devotees approaching government people, big business people, and right away there was a kind of congregation. How do we discover our congregation in the West? I don't know about this yatra, but I know in America how we did it. It was practically by accident. I'll tell the brief story in the American model and see if it resonates with anything that happened in England. So in America, the only way to be a devotee practically in the 70s and, even in the early 80s was to live inside the temple, right? It's like when you're planting a tree, you got to fence it in, protect it, from wild animals, and because it's just a little sapling. So we were just huddled inside these urban communes, and Hare Krishna, and just trying to control our senses and, become human beings, right? So, but then a little bit, it was a shock if someone would leave the temple. It was like, not just leave because, they were criminals, but they just wanted to move on with their lives. They wanted, anyway, they wanted to work maybe, and they wanted to get married and to have a family, something like that. So that was considered like weird or treasonous, or you'll never make it, Prabhu, or like that. But a funny thing happened was that the people that one by one were leaving the temple, especially after Prabhupada left the planet, they'd come back for the Sunday feast, the Sunday program. But no one in the temple knew how to relate to them, because they know Krishna's God and they know the score, they know what the story is. So they were ignored or even shunned, like that. But more and more, that's what was happening. It was becoming congregational, and people were, or not congregational, but people were leaving because we were getting older, and most people will go through that second ashram, that grihastha ashram. So they were coming back, and the devotees are scratching their heads in the temple, and, what do we do with these people? And then finally, one fine day, it dawned on the devotees that, well, they keep coming back. I guess these are our people. Duh. And that's the first congregation. In spite of ourselves, we discovered our first congregation. So it plays out in different ways, the phases, according to, as Prabhupada put it, time, country, and candidate. So holy names, holy books, temples, deities, congregation, initiation. And what's the fourth phase? The great frontier, unfulfilled. Yeah. Showing the world a better way to live in Daiva Varnashram communities. Models. Prabhupada said, look, just make a small unit of ideal community. Like E.F. Schumacher, right? Small is beautiful. Yeah, start small. Do something. So at least it's popular now to understand that this is what Prabhupada wanted, and his instructions are all there how to do it, even though he didn't show it. It's there. Because the GBC asked me in 91. I was working in a mall selling oil paintings in a mall, and I got a phone call from a godbrother, and he didn't announce himself. He said, Suresvara, congratulations. I said, what? Who's this? Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. Huh? Yeah. Oh, you didn't hear? You've been appointed by the GBC as the chairman of the Varnashram Committee to research Prabhupada's instructions on Varnashram. Oh, thanks a lot, Prabhu. I don't suppose there's a budget for this committee? Oh, I don't know about that, Prabhu. Click. Anyway, so I got this assignment in 92, actually. My wife and I and our young daughter, we were in the process of disengaging from Gitanagari and moving to India to try to we had a dream of raising our daughter in South India. So we learned a lot. It didn't quite work, but before I left, I handed the assignment off to my colleague Hare Krishna Dasi, who, if you've read 1990s into 2000, her beautiful Plain Living High Thinking pieces, she took over that column for me. And she did the research. Brilliant research. Brilliant writer, brilliant historian, brilliant analyst. And we came out with a book called Speaking About Varnashram, which traces the evolution of Prabhupada's preaching about Varnashram from 68 to 77, just through the spoken word, morning walks, room conversations, showing how Prabhupada applied Varnashram differently over 3 phases of time. And she also was the one who identified the 4 ways Prabhupada used the term. So if you look in I think it's the July 2000 issue of BTG on your database, or if you have a stock of issues, read this piece. What do we mean by Varnashram? And it gives the 4 ways Prabhupada used the phrase and how he applied it differently over 3 phases of ISKCON's history while he was walking among us. And if you get the big picture, there's no confusion. But we have confusion because people don't take the big picture. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So therefore we have conflicts about it. Okay, so those are the 4 phases. Good question, Tattva Prabhu. Any Madhajis have a question? Madhaji, yes. Raise your hand. What's your name? Ramadevi? Rangadevi. Hare Krishna.
I just wanted to ask, I've heard it said that Prabhupada was, by setting up ISKCON, Prabhupada was trying to create a Brahminical path.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering, how does that fit in with the
Yes.
Varnashram thing?
Very good.
And also, for the Deva Varnashram to be in place, how does that fit in with initiation, first and second initiation?
Yeah.
Is it supposed to be that everyone in this Deva Varnashram has first and second initiation?
Okay. Good questions.
People outside of that,
Yes.
how does it all work?
Yeah. We were talking yesterday about this second question. Was that you? Okay. Oh, it was you, Mataji. Or somebody. Anyway, okay, first question. The Brahman, putting a head back on society, right? Yeah? Okay. You're right. And that's why from 1966 to 1973, it was basically a Brahmins-only ISKCON. Because that was Prabhupada's agenda. Because before you can grow the whole social body, just like in the womb, when we're in the womb of our mothers, what develops first? The head, the central nervous system, the whole thing. So Prabhupada's priority was putting a head back on society. So he was really, 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 really pushing us to become Brahminical, to engage in Brahminical activities. Forget Varnashram. That was basically, if you take this lesson, Varnashram, clearing the confusion, the lesson before this, you will see these 3 phases. And basically the tune Prabhupada was singing from 66 to 73 was forget it. Forget Varnashram. It's not possible. It's, ancient stuff. Society is so different. It's chaotic. We can't do it. So he was saying, just chant Hare Krishna. It's like Mahaprabhu's mood. When Ramananda Roy said, he said to Ramananda Roy, tell me the highest thing. And Ramananda mentioned Varnashram, and Mahaprabhu said, Iho Bahya, this is external. Go. He didn't reject it as bogus, but he said, go higher. He wanted the most intimate thing. So Prabhupada was saying, forget it, just chant Hare Krishna, distribute books, distribute prasadam, Haribo. He had us on these, not only Brahminical pedestals, he had us on these Paramhamsa pedestals. Forget all considerations of your psychophysical nature. Just chant. It was like, the first, 12:8. Just think of me, in that sequence. If you can't do this, do this. Just think of me. And then people would say, Prabhupada, what about my mind? What about the mind? Just hear, just hear the mantra. Okay, that's phase 1. Phase 2, this I'm giving you a mini, peek at this lesson. 74 to 76, Prabhupada drops the bomb. 1974, Mayapur, Vrindavan, morning walks. We must institute Varnashram Dharma. Not for you. You don't need it. All you pure devotees of mine, all you refugees from the counterculture, you ex-hippies, you don't need it. But for them, because this Prabhupada started saying this right at the crest of the first big wave of big book distribution. At the same time, we were being severely harassed in the airports, and the first anti-cult cases started coming up. They couldn't understand what we were saying. So Prabhupada said, look, the society is in chaos. How will they understand the message without a cool brain? We need to show them something. Right now, they can't make heads or tails of what's in these books because they're in chaos. Up is down in Kali Yuga, backwards is forwards. And that's what they were telling us. They were plain living and high thinking. This is backwards. This is primitive. And we told Prabhupada this. Prabhupada, they say it's primitive. And Prabhupada's response was, you have to tell them that backwards is forwards. Back to Godhead, not back to caves. There is appropriate technology that we can use to make these kind of communities nice. Anyway, it was Brahmins only. It was kind of like the United States Marines. United States Marines, they had a saying way back when in their recruitment was, "Are you good enough to get in?" The few, the proud, "Are you good enough to get in?" Yeah, it was real macho, So ISKCON was kind of like, in those days, it was kind of like, "Are you good enough to stay in, Prabhu? To follow the regs? To chant 16 rounds." Rough and tough ISKCON days. So anyway, Prabhupada, he started to apply Varnashram differently. And from 74 to 76, he said, "Look, you don't need it. We don't need it. We're devotees. We're Vaishnavas. But we need to show the people a better way to organize themselves, a better way to live. Therefore, it starts with the Varnashram college. We have to have these Varnashram colleges." And it wasn't for us then. We were all going to be the teachers, right? We were going to teach them, how to understand your real tendency toward work and how to work for Krishna, for God. Okay, that's 74 to 76. By 77, and especially in this Varnashram Valentine conversation, Hari Shari Prabhu and Satsrup Maharaj were amazed by Prabhupada saying, "We must institute Daiva Varnashram Dharma, starting with ISKCON." And then they began to say the same things that you're saying. "But Prabhupada, I thought you said chanting Hare Krishna replaces Varnashram and Kali Yuga." Lord Chaitanya rejected it, and Prabhupada said, "Yes, Mahaprabhu," he said, "this is external. So you're going to chant like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? You can't even chant 16 rounds. You can't follow the 4 regulative principles. So you're going to be Mahaprabhu? People need help. Prabhupada said, we need to pave the way. We need to make it easy." And then we just read, to answer your second question about first initiation, second initiation, we just read Prabhupada saying, this is the same conversation, because Hari Shari, I'll set you up here. So Hari Shari said, "But Prabhupada, in our temples, after 6 months, a year, someone takes Diksha, first initiation, and then they take Gayatri, after another 6 months, a year. Just as kind of like by time, they're just sort of socially promoted to this thing." So Prabhupada said, before he said this, he said, "Why? If the person's not Brahmanically qualified, why make a farce? Why make a farce?" But why were people promoted? Because, the manager needed a cook, the manager needed a pujari, and so people were just drafted. And that was kind of the mood in Prabhupada's time with us. People were drafted. They were deputized as, go start something. Guru Das and Jamuna are on a train, right? And they get down, and then they come to Delhi, and they're going farther. But Prabhupada said, "Get down. So you start something here." On the spot. Get off the train, start something in Delhi. I think Prabhupada gave them one contact, That was the mood. It was totally an explosion. It was a pioneer thing. Daiva Varnashram means that Prabhupada wants to make the whole thing sustainable, realistic, practical, that people could, grow with. Okay, so in terms of, second initiation, why make a farce? If somebody's not Brahmanically qualified, then there's no need. Then Prabhupada says, therefore, why a Shudra artificially should be a Brahmin? Because Prabhupada is trying to remind us, what is our core identity here? Where from are we drawing our self-esteem? Not the Varna, not the ashram. It's that we're eternal servants of Krishna. This whole Varnashram thing, as necessary as it is, it's like a play. And we have different costumes on in the play. Somebody's wearing the pujari costume, some the cook costume, some food for all costume, the cow costume. We all have different, but we're all, deep down, we're aspiring Vaishnavas. And that's where the equality and the self-esteem and the appreciation comes from. So Prabhupada's saying, let him remain a Shudra. And if he follows strictly the rules and regulations of Shudra, in other words, there's duties, of somebody acting, of a Vaishnava acting in that Varna, he'll also be as good as a Brahmana. Yeah. A classic case from my generation. Who on the Vaishnava calendar, whose disappearance day do we observe every year on our Vaishnava calendar from my generation? Jayananda Prabhu. Now, if you knew Jayananda Prabhu, where were you likely to find him during the day? Underneath a car, fixing pipes, or around July, building a Rath Yatra cart. He had a degree in mechanical engineering from Ohio State University. No dummy, very bright person. But his tendency toward work was he was a builder. But is that all he was? It's like saying Jesus was a carpenter or something, or that Prabhupada was a businessman from Calcutta, Come on. So that's who we are. And so why did Prabhupada say in his letter to Jayananda after Prabhupada wrote this posthumous letter saying, I'm sure it is sure and certain that because you were hearing Harinam at the end of your life, you have gone back home, back to Godhead. And then he wrote a letter to us, and he said, you must have a day to observe Jayananda's disappearance. And we all love Jayananda, but we didn't know he was on that level. Narottam Das Thakur, Bhakti. You have a day on the calendar to observe his disappearance? He's a liberated soul. Wow. So, but he was working in Shudra Varna most of the time. Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Kene Noi. Yehi Krishna Tattvaveta Se Guru Hoy. No matter what Varna, no matter what ashram we're in, if we know the art for the heart and the science for the head of serving Krishna, say Guru Hoy. That's a guru. Yeah. So, we're not there yet historically in ISKCON's development, so it doesn't compute, when we think of how we do things in ISKCON. We're getting there. That's why that's one of the benefits of understanding Prabhupada's life, teachings, mood, and mission more deeply, is that we understand that what Prabhupada had a chance to display in Vapu for 12 years was only, a fraction. At the most, Prabhupada said 50% of what we have in Vani Prabhupada. Okay, so it's time to wrap it up. They're going to kidnap me and bring me over to some retreat center, the managers. So I'm sorry if we didn't have enough question time again, but it is a little artificial, just pulling lessons out. Tomorrow we're going to look at to love is to cooperate. Prabhupada's famous, if you love me, you'll cooperate. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai.